Good morning, teachers, staff, parents, and students. It gives me great pleasure to be with you this morning. It's a special time, and it's an honor to come share this new season in your life. Over the next couple of minutes, I'm just going to be sharing a few principles that I've put into play in my own life, and I know they work without a shadow of a doubt. My pastor says, blessed are the short-winded because they'll be invited back. Or rather, I should say, I won't be long, like Elizabeth Taylor said to her sixth husband. I'm going to start off by telling a story that illustrates a principle that we all need to apply. The story goes like so. Dear Mom and Dad, since I've left for university, I've been really bad with writing back. And I'm sorry about that. Forgive my thoughtlessness. I'll bring you up to date with what's been going on, but please sit down. Mom and Dad, are you sitting down? Do not read any further unless you're sitting down. I'm getting on pretty well now. The skull fracture and concussion I got when I jumped out of my dormitory window, when my dorm caught on fire shortly after my arrival here, is pretty well healed. I only get those sick headaches now once a day. Fortunately, the fire in my dorm and the jump from my dorm was witnessed by an attendant at the petrol station. He ran over and took me to the hospital and continued to visit me there. When I got out of the hospital, I had nowhere to live because of the burnt-out conditions of my room. But he was kind enough to invite me to share his basement flat with him. It was kind of small, but it was cute. He's a very fine boy, and we've fallen madly in love and are planning to get married, but we haven't set the date yet, but it will be before my pregnancy begins to show. Yes, Mom and Dad, I'm pregnant. I know you're looking forward to being grandparents, and I know you'll welcome the baby and give them the same tender loving care and devotion you gave to me when I was a child. The reason for the delay in our marriage is that my boyfriend has a minor infection that I carelessly caught from him. I know, however, that you will welcome him with open arms. He is kind, but although he's not well educated, he is ambitious. Although he is of a different race and religion than ours, I know your often expressed tolerance will not permit you to be bothered by any of that. In conclusion, now that I've brought you up to speed, I want to tell you that there was no dormitory fire. I did not have a concussion or a skull fracture. I wasn't in hospital. I'm not pregnant, I'm not infected, and there is no boyfriend. However, I'm failing history and science. And I just wanted you to see it in perspective. Perspective is the operative word, ladies and gentlemen. It depends which way you're looking at it. You know, the statistics came out, and it said that if you have running water, a roof over your head, and sanitation, you are in the top 2% of the richest people in the world. So it all depends which way you look at it. I tell students time and time again that come from poor backgrounds, and I'm like, well, it depends what you classify as poor and disadvantaged is, because there's people who've come from even worse situations than you are in, and they still succeed. So it's all about perspective. Don't become so well-adjusted to our culture. We must never become so well-adjusted to our culture and fit into it without thinking. We have to think. I've heard a story that's been shared many times before of a mother who used to cook some pork. And when she cooked the pork and she put it in the oven, she used to cut off the piece at the end. So her daughter used to look at her do this time and time again when she was cooking this pork. Every time she was about to put it in the oven, she cut the end off. So she asked, Mom, why do you always do that? Why do you always cut the piece at the end off? She says, well, I don't know. Your grandmother used to do it. So that's why I continue to do it. Well, let's ask Gran when we go over to Gran this weekend. Gran, I've seen Mom time and time again cut off the end of the pork before she puts it in the oven. Why does she do that? Well, my child, when we were younger, when I was raising your mom, our ovens were small. The pork couldn't fit inside. So we had to cut off the end. So, we shouldn't become so adjusted to culture without thinking and changing our perspective. We spend a lot of time thinking that prestige, resources, and belonging to institutions make us better off. Why do we assume that someone who is smaller or poorer or less skilled is necessarily at a disadvantage? We've heard that bigger is better. We've heard that money makes parenting easier. We've heard that private schools are better. I can ask you today, what's better between a Porsche and a Kia minivan? It all depends who you're talking to. Because a strength and an advantage is relative to the situation that it requires. I mean, to a young 25-year-old man, a Porsche is most probably better. But I'm a father of two. I can't fit my kids in the prams in the Porsche. So a strength is relative and advantageous depending on the situation that it requires. Another thing that I really believe we should change our perspective on is the way we speak. I'm not going to talk about, digital disruption. I'm not going to talk about, job markets that you guys are going into. I'm going to really focus on just mastering self. Because it's when we master self that we can go on and become and perform at optimum level in whatever sphere that we find ourselves in. And we need to change our life sentences. And here's a life sentence that we need to change. Have you ever heard people say this? Don't try and reinvent the wheel. That's basically saying don't ever try anything new. Everything has been invented. I mean, even as the CEO said, there's jobs in the next 5 years that we don't even know what their names are, and you guys are going to be in working in those spheres. So there is no such thing as don't try and reinvent the wheel, because trust me, some wheels need to be reinvented. I ask you today, when last did you do something for the first time? When last did you use a different route to work? Here's another one. Be careful what you wish for. I'm sure you've heard people say that. That's basically saying don't wish for too much because you might not be able to handle it. I'm here to say to you today that be intentional about what you wish for and trust that along with it, you'll get the capacity to handle it. Here's another one. Boys will be boys. Where do we get this stuff from? This is just another way of accepting that bad behavior is normal. One of my favorite authors, Paul, says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. When I grew up, I put away childish things. Here's another one. A leopard can't change its spots. This one I can identify with the most because I'm a recovering drug addict. I'm clean for 17 years this year. And I remember for the first time when I came out in public in the media and I shared that I had a drug problem and I was going into rehab, the prevalent thought in the media at the time was that it was a publicity stunt and that a leopard will never be able to change its spots. Does that mean we're never able to change? Does this mean that we can't change our character? Does it mean you are stuck being you? I disagree. You can change. Here's another one. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Reinforcing that learning has a lid. Referring back to the CEO, he did say that it's only now you feel like you've stopped learning, but the beginning of learning only begins now. The learning process never ever has a lid. You are always a student in life. Here's the last one. It's easier said than done. Why do we say that? Because that's just another excuse for not attempting. I believe that we should do hard things until they become easy. Denzel Washington said the greatest threat to progress is not ease. The greatest threat to progress is ease, not difficulty. We need to learn to make friends with pressure. That's why I run Comrades Marathon every single year, because it allows me to make friends with pressure. It allows me to teach myself to even function in times when my back is up against the wall. And it's in those times that we get to learn who we are. Because it's about purpose. The most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you found out why. Many people still die with their music inside of them because they never ever find out what their purpose was. There's nothing worse than getting to the top and finding out that there's nothing there or it's not what you wanted. You look at the lives of Bill and Melinda Gates. They've made gazillions only to get to the top and find out they actually don't need these gazillions. They just give them away. It's about purpose and finding out and finding out the gift and connecting the gift and the giver of the gift. Because when we don't connect the gift and the giver of the gift, abuse is inevitable. I found myself blessed with success beyond my wildest expectations. Sold millions of records. And I thought it was just about me. All about having a big fat party and chasing girls and getting drunk and getting high. When you don't connect the purpose and the gift and the giver of the gift, abuse is inevitable. Because our character needs to keep us where our gift takes us. Your gift is going to take you many, many places. Your gift is going to open many, many doors for you. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that there's many gifted individuals who sit here in front of me. But it's your character that's going to keep you where your gift takes you. We're all told you can be all you want to be, dream it and you can achieve it. It's true because it's a principle. But I ask you the question, so what can happen? We must be part of something bigger than ourselves. It's not only about amassing wealth. It's not only about driving fancy cars. It's not only about having a beautiful wife or a husband. I tell young people all the time, it doesn't matter whether she's beautiful, you do not live in your bed. When the tire hits the road, a cute chick is not going to cut it. You need substance. I need to be the kind of man, or we need to be the kind of men who deserve the woman that we are trusting God for. I didn't get what I prayed for until I became the type of person who would receive it. It's all about purpose. You have not come here, graduated, so that you can go out there and work for blue chip companies. That's part of the plan. But your main purpose of being here today is so that, of graduating here today, is understanding how you can be of service to mankind. That's the main purpose. I'll ask you this question, because many people trip themselves up because of a warped sense of identity, not understanding who they are. There was a time in my life when I didn't understand who I was. And when you don't know who you are, you can't achieve much. So I ask you today this question. What is your name? Each of us have a name from our parents. We either named after someone or something, especially in the African tradition. If your name is Puleng, it was most probably raining when you were born, so they called you Puleng, because Pula is the name for rain. If your name is Mushimane Khape, which means boy again, which means your parents tried, they had 4 boys, and they were trying for a girl, and they got another boy, and they said Mushimane Khape, which means another boy. We have old school names, and please forgive me if these are one of your names, but these are old school names. Elizabeth, Gertrude, Dorcas, my mother's name is Dorcas, Charles. We have new school names. When you look in the media these days, you always find these new school names. Phoenix, Zion, Willow, Hannah Montana, Maddox. Jay-Z's daughter's Blue Ivy, Carter. The 10 most popular names in South Africa are Puleng, Paki, Baballo, Mutudi, Masego, Naledi, Lisedi, Mamello, Tumelo, Lifu. What does a name do? A name identifies someone. It gives somebody a rank, a position, like the CEO or the president or the general. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 1 says, a good name is to be treasured more than silver and gold, because a name represents a reputation. A boxer friend of mine said to me, Cubs, all you have in Johannesburg is your word and your name. I'm speaking to you students today. Protect your name. Create what brand tacticians call your brand world. Associate your name with all things good and of a noble report. If you want to be an eagle, you have to stop hanging around with the chickens. When we hear a name, it tells us something about that someone. The name also conjures up certain emotions about that aforesaid something or someone. You've heard the term, your reputation precedes you. My name went before me before I came here today to the students. It made you feel a certain way. We're not going to unpack how it made you feel, but it made you feel a certain way. Don't say anything, but notice how you feel when I say these certain names. Apple Mac computers, Nike, Kaizer Chiefs, Manchester United, Barack Obama, Julius Malema, Nelson Mandela, HIV. Every single time I said a name, it conjured up a certain emotion. Just like we have a human name, we have a God name, and we have an enemy name. The enemy would like to give you a name to second guess you about who you are. The enemy would like to give you a name to intimidate you. The enemy would like to give you a name to give you a wrong perspective about who you are, to keep you insecure, to make you feel like you've got nothing to offer. Maybe someone somewhere said to you one day, you're useless, you're a reject, you're fat, you're skinny, you're an addict, you're a loser, you're a no-hoper, you're depressed, you're unreliable. An enemy name will come through an upbringing or an experience or in an environment that had a big impact on your life. I remember when I was in standard 6, which they call grade 8 these days, I was at Sacred Heart College and I had a teacher called Mr. Lowry. And Mr. Lowry said to me one day, Mabalane, because my surname is Mabalane. Granted, I was a handful in class, but I don't think he needed to go all the way here. He said to me, Mabalane, are you stupid? I said, no, sir. He says, is your head made out of wood or cement? And I said, none, sir. He said, no, you have to choose. And it's in those moments that I started to believe that I was academically challenged. And later on in life, I've actually found out that I'm actually not academically challenged. I just didn't apply myself in school. Because it's later on in life when I applied myself that I started to achieve success beyond my wildest dreams. But now, when we allow a certain name to stick in our lives, it can hinder our progress. I ask you today, what name have you allowed to stick? I think of my moms. You know, moms love us, but they call us certain names. And I know they say it out of love, but we have to be careful of the words that we speak over our children, because some of these words stick. There's people sitting here believing lies about themselves that are not true. And you can become a CEO and you can become a PhD doctor, but you'll never realize your full potential because of a lie that you believed about yourself. So I ask you today, what name are you responding to? Because your success is directly proportional to how much you respond to that name. In closing, I would be totally remiss if I never ever gave credit where credit is due. I am who I am because of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I am of the firm conviction that we have a mind, we have a body, and we have a spirit. I am of the firm conviction that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. We are not physical beings having a spiritual experience. I'm going to say that again. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. We are not physical beings having a spiritual experience. So what does that mean? We have to feed the spirit man. That's who you are. At the core of who you are, that's who you are. And you've got to feed that man. Here you are sitting here today, you fed your minds. Graduating, proof that you fed your minds. Every single one of you had breakfast this morning. You fed your bodies. But we walk through life feeding our minds, feeding our bodies, but neglect who we really are, the spirit man. I am who I am because of Jesus Christ. You ask yourself, who is Jesus? I say, good question. Jesus is not Eskom, but he lights your way. He's not Shield, but he gives you 24-hour protection. He's not Spar, but he's good for you. He's not MTN, but he is everywhere you go. He's not ABSA, but he's there today, tomorrow, and forever. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He says, I, the Lord, do not change. He's not Castle Lager, but he's the taste that stood the test of time. He's not Standard Bank, but he's simpler, he's better, and he's faster. In chemistry, he turned water into wine. In biology, he was born without a normal conception. In physics, he disproved the law of diminishing return by feeding 5,000 people with 5 fish and 5 loaves. In medicine, he cured the sick without administering a single dose of drugs. In history, he is the beginning and the end. In government, he said he shall be called Prince of Peace and Wonderful Counselor. In religion, he said no one comes to the Father except through him. He is the greatest man in history. He had no servants, but we call him master. He had no degree, but we call him teacher. He had no medicine, yet we call him healer. He had no army, yet kings feared him. He was buried in a tomb, but yet he lives today. Thank you very much.